Not everyone wants to spend hundreds or even thousands on a watch, and honestly, not everyone can. But here's the thing, that doesn't mean you have to settle for something that looks cheap, because right now, there are watches under $150 that completely change that idea. Watches that look better than they should, feel more solid than you'd expect, and in some cases don't even look like budget pieces at all. And once you start paying attention, you realize something interesting. Price doesn't always match what you're getting. So in this video, we're breaking down 5 watches under $150 that make absolutely no sense for the price. Let's start with one that shouldn't be this good. Number 1. This is where things start to feel way more expensive than they should. This is the Cadisen C8185 automatic. At first glance, nothing about this watch screams $150. Clean dial, polished case, and a design that feels much closer to something you'd expect in a higher price category. And that's where the surprise begins. Because this isn't just about looks. The dial is well balanced, the markers are sharp, the hands are clean, and everything feels aligned in a way that gives the watch a refined presence. Nothing feels random, nothing feels rushed, and that level of control is what makes it stand out. The case follows the same idea: smooth finishing, simple lines, and proportions that sit comfortably on the wrist. It doesn't try to be flashy, but it still feels elevated. And that's a hard balance to get right at this price. Inside, you're getting an automatic movement, which immediately changes how the watch is perceived. Because now, it's not just a good-looking watch, it's something mechanical, something you can feel working. And that adds real value. On the wrist, it feels light but structured, comfortable but not cheap. And that combination is what makes it interesting. Because instead of feeling like a budget watch trying to look expensive, it actually delivers that impression naturally. And this is where the perception shifts. Because for under $150, this simply doesn't make sense. And that's exactly why it takes the first spot on this list. Number 2. This is where simplicity turns into something almost unbeatable. This is the G-Shock DW5600. At first glance, it looks basic. Square shape, digital display, and a design that hasn't changed much over the years. But that's exactly the point. Because this watch isn't trying to impress visually. It's built around reliability. And that's where it becomes interesting. The design is simple, but extremely functional. Everything is easy to read, everything is easy to use. No extra elements, no unnecessary details. And that clarity gives it a different kind of presence. The build is where it really stands out. Shock resistance, durability, and a construction that can handle daily use without any concern. It's the kind of watch you wear without thinking, and that changes the experience completely. Because instead of worrying about scratches or damage, you just use it. And that freedom adds value. On the wrist, it feels light, comfortable, and secure. Not bulky, not distracting. Just practical. And that's exactly what makes it so popular. Because while other watches try to look expensive, this one focuses on doing its job perfectly. And somehow, that makes it feel even more valuable. And this is where the perception shifts. Because for under $150, you're getting something that's proven, reliable, and built to last. No hype, no gimmicks, just a watch that works every single time. And that's exactly why it earns its place on this list. Number 3. This is where things start to look way more expensive than they should. This is the Pagani design PD1661. At first glance, it immediately gives off a luxury feel. The case finishing, the bracelet, and the overall design all point in one direction. Premium. And that's what catches people off guard. Because at this price, you don't expect this kind of presence. The dial is clean and well-structured. Applied markers, polished hands, and a layout that feels familiar, but executed better than expected. Nothing feels cheap. And that's where it stands out. Because watches in this range often try to imitate higher-end designs, but don't always get the details right. This one gets surprisingly close. The case has weight, the bracelet feels solid, and the finishing reflects light in a way that gives the watch a more expensive look. On the wrist, it feels confident. Not too big, not too small, just balanced enough to work in different situations. And that versatility adds to its value. Inside, you're getting a reliable automatic movement, which again, at this price changes everything. Because now you're combining a luxury-inspired design with mechanical movement. And that combination is rare in this category. And this is where the perception shifts. Because instead of feeling like a cheap alternative, it starts to feel like a smart choice. A watch that gives you the look without the cost. And for under $150, that's exactly the kind of value that makes no sense. Number 4. This is where bold design meets everyday practicality. This is the Naviforce NF8075. At first glance, it looks busy. Multiple elements on the dial, strong markers, and a design that leans more toward a sporty tactical style. But spend a few seconds with it, and it starts to make more sense. Because despite the complexity, the layout is structured. Each element has its place. Nothing feels randomly thrown together. And that's what gives it control. The dial has depth, layers, textures, and contrasts that catch light differently depending on the angle. And that creates a more dynamic look than you'd expect at this price. The case follows that same idea. Solid, slightly aggressive, but still wearable. It has presence, without becoming overwhelming. And that balance is important, because watches like this can easily feel too much, too busy, too loud. This one avoids that. On the wrist, it feels secure and stable, comfortable enough for daily wear, but with enough character to stand out. And that's what makes it interesting, because instead of trying to look like a luxury watch, it builds its own identity. Something more sporty, more functional, more expressive. Inside, you get a quartz movement. Simple, reliable, and easy to live with. No maintenance, no complications, just consistency. And this is where the perception shifts. Because for under $150, you're getting a watch that feels complete, not just affordable, but well thought out. And that's exactly why it earns its place on this list. Number 5, and this is where everything comes together. This is the Pagani design PD1820. At first glance, it immediately feels more refined than you'd expect. Clean dial, balanced layout, and a design that leans more toward classic elegance than sporty aggression. It doesn't try too hard, and that's exactly why it works. Because instead of relying on bold details, it focuses on proportion. The dial is simple, but not boring. The markers are sharp, the hands are clean, and everything feels aligned in a way that gives the watch a more mature presence. Nothing feels rushed. Nothing feels out of place, and that level of control is rare at this price. The case keeps things slim and wearable. Polished surfaces reflect light nicely, giving it that subtle premium feel without becoming flashy. On the wrist, it feels comfortable and composed. Easy to wear, easy to style. It's the kind of watch that fits almost anywhere. Inside, you're getting a reliable movement that does exactly what it should. No complications, no stress, just consistency. And that simplicity adds to the experience. Because instead of thinking about the watch, you just wear it. And this is where everything shifts. Because after seeing all 5, you start to realize something. At this price point, you're not supposed to get this kind of quality, this kind of design, this kind of variety. But somehow you do. And that's the whole point. Because these watches don't just offer value. They completely break what people expect from $150. And once you see that, it's hard to go back. And that's exactly why this list makes no sense.